To be clear, I will do my best to explain everything that is going on. I might explain some stuff not in the best way, but I'll try to keep you guys entertained at least, since the learning process is never guaranteed with these videos. Hello all! If you don't know me, you're not missing anything amazing, but you might be missing out on a good game. And I could tell you what type of game it is and what it consists of, but I already explained that in the last two videos, and I could use a boost on those views, to be honest.
Really?
Well, okay, I'll give a brief description about it. It's a shooter driving game where you control a taxi company and its employees. Then, you and your employees can deliver customers to conquer that region or district, all within the time limit. You are competing with other 3 taxi companies, so don't forget to
Go get the strap. Go get the strap.
There will be weapon dealerships, car dealerships, and more all around the city to stock up your supplies. And that system is what we are talking today, the different inventories and how they are working. There will be some different types of inventories in the game, but for now I only created our player inventory. Also because I wanted to start testing out our weapons and different usable items. But the way that it's implemented, it's really easy to add more inventories later on. So let's start with it. First and foremost, this inventory is based on this video right here. This is amazing, guys, as you can learn the system but also different ways of communicating between nodes and really good code practices to start using on your project. After watching this, I truly felt that I'm just a baby using this software called Godot. And although I used the video for the basic system, once you understand how is it working and how the data is being transferred, it's easier to add more features to that same inventory, like Quickslots. We will talk about it in this video. Or just even improving the features of dropping and splitting any item. The inventories are resource-based, so we can assign a different one to each player. So, we have a custom resource for the inventory, a resource for the slot data, and an item resource that will be used to contain all of the item's info. The inventory will hold an array of slot datas. That's the inventory size. And each slot data will hold an item resource and the quantity of it. Then we can create each item that we need just by creating a lot of item resources and assigning the correct data. For debugging purposes, we can set items in the inventory directly in the editor, but this is all communicated through code because the only way of getting items is buying them in the shop or dropping them by dropping players. Get it? So now that we get how the data in the inventory is being handled, we can move to the visual part of the inventory. I created a scene and some UI art in GIMP, and I came up with this inventory interface and this slot design. I know that it looks like a mess of nodes, but working with UI, at least static UI, it's really easy in Godot once you understand the different control nodes. But we will cover how to work with the UI on a different video. You might notice that on the editor the inventory doesn't have any slots. Why is this, you ask? This is because it is populated according our player inventory size. In this inventory scene we have everything set up, and as you can see that if I add the slot scene manually in the respective grid container, you can see our inventory taking its shape. So on start we check for the player inventory resource, we check its size and assign a slot to each index that we can find in our player inventory. To check in which slot we are pressing, we are using the input signals that Godot provides with the control nodes. We then match the button press and the index of the grid container that the player pressed, and match it with our inventory. We are also using those signals to trigger the visuals of the over and selected slot, which are basically just 2 texture rects included in the slot scene that we just turn on or off. For the selected slot, it's just a bit trickier because we need to keep track of which slot we clicked before and compare it with the new click. And then, by using a custom resource for the items, we can assign the thumbnail, for example, of each slot according to the item that is containing. And this type of data transfer works for everything. In our item, we can check its name, description, category, references for the actual 3D scenes, thumbnail for the inventory, etc. Whatever we define in the custom resource, we can then define in each item resource and access it later. Basically, if we need to find any type of info on that slot, we can just check what resource item is containing. Now, for grabbing items out of the inventory, we have a slot scene just acting as the selected slot. It is a bit faded, and when we grab an item, we make that slot visible and pass the item info to that same slot, while clearing the one on our inventory. Then, that slot scene, when it is visible, it will follow our mouse position with just a slight offset so it doesn't stay on top of the mouse. In this system, I made it that you have to click and hold for around 1.5 seconds to actually grab the item. This is just a timer that is being triggered when we press the slot, and it keeps running while the mouse is being pressed. We connect the timeout signal and we only grab the slot after the timeout. Same thing for dropping that item back in our inventory, but in this case there is no timer and it just goes through some conditionals, because we need to check if the player is dropping on an already used slot, and if that slot is the same type and stackable. We can merge completely our selected slot item if we have the stack space, or we can merge with remainder. This means if the merging goes higher than the max quantity allowed, this will make the slot on the inventory to the max quantity and the selected slot will keep the remainder, for the player to drop on another slot, empty or the same type with available stack space. For the functionality of the buttons of our inventory interface, they also update according to the item when we press the slot. This way we can equip weapons or use consumables. And for splitting, we check if the item is stackable and the actual quantity of it. When we split, we just duplicate the slot data and append the new slot data to an empty one on the inventory. For dropping the actual item on the floor, each item has a reference to a pickup scene. This scene is just a node 3D that holds a slot data variable, and when we drop an item, we instantiate that same scene and just copy the original slot data from our inventory to the slot data in the node 3D. This way, when someone picks up that item from the floor, we just need to copy that slot data to the inventory is being passed, and queue free that scene. To actually pick up the item, we have two area 3D nodes. One with just a sphere shape that will let the player know that he is close to that item, and the other one with the actual item shape but slightly bigger so that we can grab the mouse input easier. For visual attention, I added a small rotating and floating animation to the item, and also a highlight shader that I found in Godot shaders. So, when the player is in range of an item and overs that item with the mouse, the rotating animation goes slightly faster. Of course, I got lost in adding more visual junk to that scene, and I ended up creating two particle systems from scratch just to give a bit more appeal to the item. Trust me, it was totally worth it, the 2 hours just twisting and dragging sliders around. And I know what you're thinking, after seeing this, I could do some Hollywood work, I know, but I'm not leaving you guys. How could I leave such an amazing community? This is where you subscribe if you haven't already. So, to pick up the item, the player needs to be in range of that same item and right-click it to append it to the inventory. Now for the weapon management. I created 3 Quickslots for primary, secondary, and throwables. Basically, in the player scene, I added a node that just holds a script that will contain all the functions and logic to deal with weapons. For this, I extended the item class and created a weapon class. This way, our weapons have all the data from the item class and some extra ones like magazine size, fire rate, etc. When we equip a weapon, we are just passing that weapon data to our weapon manager through a signal, which will then check which type of weapon we equipped and populate the right Quickslot with the right data accordingly. And on the Quickslot, I already designed it thinking about the animation, so I also added that when it's toggled or untoggled. Isn't that juicy?
Moist.
For the visual instance of the actual weapon, we have a scene that just contains another node representing the position for our character's right hand. Since I'm using inverse kinematics on the right arm of the character, we just need to grab that node's position and pass it to our target's position. Then each weapon references to its own scene when we want to draw it. This way we have our right hand always in the correct position according to the weapon we are holding. I still haven't implemented the throwables because I was missing the models for it, but soon they will be added to the game, I promise. Same thing goes for consumables, which I think I will be using mostly food or drink models from Asset Forge as well. And I'm still thinking, how am I going to implement the actual upgrades or bonus on the player, but for now I think I'm still using the same item class, and then each visual scene will contain a different script calling the different upgrades maybe? So tell me what you think about it actually. If you think the items could be implemented in another way, or even some general ideas for the game, you can head out to our Discord or just drop it at the comment section. All the feedback is welcome. Anyways, thank you guys for sticking with me until the end of the video, and I see y'all later.